Hi, this is Professor Favors. So I want to do a quick discussion on the Harvard Political Review article, and the title, of course, is "The End of the Women's College" with a question mark, and the author is Brian Burton. So I am accessing this article on Saturday, April 8th, 2023. If you can see that information right up under the title of the article, because when you are having to format your works cited entry, pay attention to when you actually access the article. When you are thinking about analyzing a particular text, especially when you need to use it to validate or invalidate your own argument, go back to the English assignment sheet and remember what the actual prompt question is about. And the prompt question is, are single sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? So that means that you would have to understand what answer you are going to use to create your own thesis. How are you answering that question? If you believe that single sex colleges are obsolete, that is a yes answer. If you believe that single sex colleges are not obsolete, that is a no answer. So then your yes answer would be single sex colleges are obsolete. They no longer provide an important alternative to co ed colleges. Okay, that's your yes answer. Put that off to the side. Okay. With a no answer, no, single sex colleges are not obsolete. They still provide an important alternative to co ed colleges. Put that off to the side. Now you have to determine which answer you're going to use in your paper because you can only choose one. And then the opposite or the counter to your answer will work as a counterclaim in your paper. So in the PowerPoint, there's information about the regular academic essay, and then there is information about an argumentative essay where you have to actually build an argument. So then, based upon your answer or based upon your position on the topic, you now have to use that answer, and of course the whole assignment sheet as a way to gauge the source. So now we're looking at The End of the Women's College by Brian Burton, and this was published October 30th, 2010. So let's read it and understand what his thesis is, as well as how he is organizing the topic. All right. Um, Subtitle: The Decades Long Decline of Single Sex Higher Education. In 1960, a college bound female eager to attend a single sex school enjoyed a selection of 200 all women's colleges from which to choose. 50 years later, the same applicant would find only 60 such schools, even as the number of colleges in America has grown exponentially. The decline in the number of single sex institutions parallels a more fundamental decline in the mission of the women's college. These institutions can no longer serve their original purpose, providing opportunities for those shut out from the male dominated world of higher education. While few would deny that gender discrimination still exists, this rationale proves less than compelling when women account for more than half of the college student population. As women continue to advance in society, and as the detrimental effects of gender discrimination continue to fade, women's colleges will continue to decline in number and in purpose. This is the thesis of the article. This is the purpose of Brian Burton writing the article. We know that there is a difference between what was in 1960 and what is now, or 50 years later, that there were 200 all women's colleges from which many could choose. However, 50 years later, only 60 such schools we can find. And so then he gives us this information about the decline in the number of single sex institutions parallels more fundamental decline in the mission of the women's college, meaning that he's connecting the fact that we don't see that many women's colleges anymore with this idea that the mission of the women's college has this has also declined, meaning that they were necessary at 200 all women's colleges. Now they are unnecessary or obsolete at 60 such schools. So we understand, even if he's not using the word obsolete, when we apply our concept or our thesis based upon our prompt question, are single sex colleges obsolete? You have evidence here that they were not obsolete initially in 1960, but they became obsolete 50 years later when you only have 60 such schools. When you are thinking about the thesis, as women continue to advance in society and as the detrimental effects of gender discrimination continue to fade, women's colleges will continue to decline in number and in purpose. Meaning that before colleges were open to women, making them co-educational institutions between with men and women, the mission was to resolve the issue with gender discrimination, meaning that all men were practically able to go to school, and it was largely wealthy sons of wealthy men, right? You know, capitalists, sons who came from a good name. And then I note and then I note in the PowerPoint that women who were able to go to college, to all girls colleges or all women's colleges, they were women who came from elite backgrounds. They could attend Vassar College. And then if you did not have an elite background, but you came from a middle class background, you could attend Mount Holyoke. So then of course there was no room for the person who could not afford college. So now that gender discrimination has continues to fade, meaning that we don't see the same gender discrimination that we saw in 1960 and before that, that there's no need to have women's colleges anymore, because now that initial goal is no longer a goal. The goal to make sure that women were not discriminated based upon gender is no longer a goal anymore, because women cannot be discriminated against women. I mean, against in terms of generally. And so then that means that there's a decline in number and in purpose. So if we have this thesis here that is bolded here, if we have this thesis where Brian Burton is focusing on the aspect of it, of the decline in number and in purpose, then we can look at Brian Burton from a yes answer, meaning that he's suggesting that single sex colleges are obsolete and that they no longer provide an important alternative to co-educational institutions. In other words, they were needed because women could not attend um, uh, school with all men. But when single sex colleges became coeducational, accepting men or accepting women, then of course they declined in number and purpose. So we understand again that this thesis here that you see is a yes answer. Yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. They no longer provide an important alternative to co ed colleges. So now that we understand his purpose for writing and we see that his thesis is a yes answer, we're going to also now look for all the counter arguments on the topic, which are no answers. No, single sex colleges are not obsolete. They still provide an important alternative to co ed colleges. So let's look at the next section, which is subtitled The Benefits of Women's Colleges. In the 1960s and 1970s, a combination of social changes, legislative decisions, and increased demand for higher education among baby boomers caused many previously all male institutions to go co ed. Okay, this is a yes answer because they were initially single sex, but it's a yes answer. Okay, In the wake of these shifts, proponents of women's colleges still argue for the relevance of their institutions. In particular, advocates contend that the schools remain uniquely situated to address issues of gender disparity and discrimination that still put women at a disadvantage in educational and professional life. Frances Spielhagen, author of Debating Single Sex Education and a professor of education at Mount St. Mary College, told the HPR that single sex education works for some to create a distraction free environment where women can reach their full potential without the pressure to conform to the expectations of men. All of these sentences here represent a no answer. Proponents mean in support of, advocates mean in support of. So these sentences here are in support of single sex colleges. So their answer would be a no in your paper. No, single sex colleges are not obsolete. They still provide an important alternative to coeducational institutions. Pay attention to how the author, Brian Burton, is using evidence. He's referencing a particular author, Frances Spielhagen, the book that she wrote, what her profession is, and what she says. Single sex education works for some to create a distraction free environment. So she's still in support of single sex colleges, which means she falls under a no answer. Pay attention to how the author is structuring this paragraph. He began on his position when he creates a topic sentence in the 1960s about them going co-ed. This topic sentence supports his thesis here, right? Remember that the purpose of a topic sentence is always to frame the paragraph and then also support the thesis, okay? And so then all of the sentences that you see here that begin with in the wake of these shifts, proponents and advocates, and the fact that single sex college creates a distraction free environment, puts this at a no answer and comes after a yes answer. Yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. Okay. Similarly, Rosemary Salomon, a professor of law at St. John's University, argued that women's colleges provide a worthwhile range of leadership opportunities where it is inevitable that the editor in chief of the school newspaper is going to be a woman and all athletic teams will be captained by a woman. So it's basically how you see yourself is represented in all of the other women as being leaders, powerful champions, etc. So this similarly here, right? The thoughts that you see that come after the similarly are all of the thoughts that actually help to support what you see here, right? Let me see if I can do this. Okay, this similarly here helps to support all of the thoughts that you see here, right? Okay, okay, and then see if I can do that. Okay. Okay. And so then Salomon told the HPR that even an educational institution in which leadership positions are split evenly between men and women would not provide women with the same exposure to female leadership. And that's a very important point to make, because if you are a woman coming up in the 1960s and even before that, and you don't see many women who look like you so that you could envision yourself as becoming one of them, then it's going to be hard to say to you, your mother say to you, you could become anything, right? You could become president, you can become whatever you desire. But when you see women at a single sex school in a leadership position, and now the students who are women exposed to a woman in a leadership role, then it helps you to envision yourself as becoming that as well, right? So then that's still at a no answer, meaning that single sex colleges, all the way up to the proponents, single sex colleges are not obsolete. Okay. And then Salomon argues that women's colleges expose their students to positions of responsibility and offer female role models in the way that co-educational institutions cannot. Pay attention to the strategy here. Brian Burton did not create a thesis that focused on co-educational institutions. He still addressed the topic being single-sex institutions or single-sex colleges, implicitly being obsolete. Okay, so remember, see if I can erase this. First time, kind of using all this stuff. Remember that how he starts off with his thesis, with his own thesis. He frames the paragraph with a topic sentence that supports that. So this is his argument. And then he gives you or provides you with the counter argument on the topic. The counter argument being that other people believe single sex colleges are still important, that they are not obsolete. If he ended his article here and he didn't go into any other part of the article, right, to continue, discussing the topic, then there really wouldn't be a full balance discussion of the topic. Also, if he stops here, then he stops on his counter argument, or the counter argument on the topic. That means that he has lost his argument. If he starts in one way but ends on the other side, he lost his argument. So he has to keep going in the same way that you would have to keep going. That you cannot end on the counter argument. If you are a yes answer, then everything in between will be a no, however way you frame it. But by the end of your essay, you should still be a yes answer. The same can be said of if you are a no answer. Everything in the middle can be yes. But by the time you end that paper in your conclusion, you should be a no answer. So we have to keep going so he doesn't lose his argument. So here's your next section: when separation ends. Nonetheless, every time you see a nonetheless, we're looking at a however. We're looking at it on the other hand, right? So, nonetheless, some argue that single sex education suffers from significant drawbacks. All female schools can create an environment in which women become more conscious of their gender, which is not always productive. As Bernard College sophomore Amy Stringer told the HPR, when I cross register for classes at Columbia, I become acutely aware of the presence of men and my own status as a woman. Stringer suggested that women's colleges can accentuate the feeling of separateness, which can sometimes build one's confidence, of course, but which can also highlight one's outsider status. Let me just stop right here for a minute. So we understand that he has returned to his argument, which is yes, single sex colleges are obsolete, and look at how he's using evidence to support that claim, right? So the evidence is when I cross register for classes at Columbia, I become acutely aware of the presence of men and my own status as a woman, meaning that if you are always at a single sex college and you're always surrounded by women, you don't have time to compete with men. And so then putting you in a coeducational environment might trigger something in you, and it might sort of make you feel insecure because you don't have the practice of competing with men. But regardless, nonetheless gives us the rebuttal on the topic, or at least a counter, Burton's counter to the two sources here, counter. So counter to counter. Okay. And then one of the real dangers of single sex education, or single sex anything for that matter, noted Spielhagen, is that separate is different. She continued, from that difference, a value judgment can be inferred. While Spielhagen believes that there is still a place for single sex education, one can see how the continuation of single sex education might be counted as a failure for feminism, if indeed it perpetuates gender based stereotypes, and biases. Pay attention to the framing of this sentence. So part of the sentence is pro single sex college or is a no answer. And then the other part, everything after the comma, is a yes answer. Yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. Okay. So again, he's using Spielhagen in two places. He's using Spielhagen to support the no answer. No, single sex colleges are not obsolete. And he's also using Spielhagen in this paragraph to support his position. Yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. It's two-part where Spielhagen still believes one thing, but he ends up having to rebut Spielhagen altogether. Okay. So again, remember, we have a thesis, his thesis. Okay. Then we have him framing the paragraph uh, to support his point of view. So this will be considered an argumentative thesis here, right? Versus a regular thesis in an academic paper. Okay. Then we have his first claim on the topic, which functions as a topic sentence in this um, article, and then he gives you the full. Then he gives you counter arguments on the topic, going full in. And as long as he doesn't stop there, he does not lose his argument. So then he gets into a nonetheless, which brings us back to his purpose for writing, which is to show or discuss that as the detrimental effects of gender discrimination continue to fade, women's colleges will continue to decline and in number and in purpose. Meaning that if you have many women who continue to feel the presence of men coming from a single sex environment and feeling triggered or feeling insecure about that, you're going to have many more people saying we just need to all be coeducational. Okay. So now let's look at the last part of the article, the subtitle Rising Costs. And we need to see what his strategy is, because if he stops here, he wins his argument or he ends on his argument. We don't have to read anything else after that. Every sentence in this paragraph, every sentence in this paragraph is a nonetheless on the topic. It's a counter to the counter. And if we stopped here, then it would look like a rebuttal on the topic. But let's continue to see how he ends. Women's colleges today still try to serve the crucial role of preparing women to thrive in a competitive environment. In a society where women are still not paid equal salaries for equal work, the Women's College provides a safe environment to grow academically and to prepare for successful careers. As Stringer noted, the Women's College still exists because gender is still a major factor in one's chances for success. So we know that that's a no answer. No, single sex colleges are not obsolete. That's the other side of the argument. Again, if we stopped here or if Burton stopped here, then he would lose his argument. So he has to end on his argument. Nonetheless, which tells us this is the ultimate rebuttal on the topic. Nonetheless, single sex schools face an uncertain future. In a society with no gender discrimination, there will be no need for gender separation, and there will be no women's colleges. As long as women are systematically disadvantaged, perhaps the women's college will have a place. Yet, as disadvantages increasingly dissipate, so does the need for such communities. And as the benefits gained from women's colleges seem to grow more distant, concerns about their costs become more prominent. Do women's colleges, rather than breaking down stereotypes, actually help perpetuate them? Now he ends on a completely different question, right? But this is still Brian Burden ending on on his claim, right, or his purpose for writing. I believe that you need to answer your own questions, but then you can see the whole article as answering his whole that question as well. So remember, this is the end of the Women's College Harvard Political Review. I think I'm going to have to do an MLA formatting um, video as well. The End of the Women's College, Brian Burton, October 30th, 2010. And this is his thesis: as women continue to advance in society and as the detrimental effects of the Women's College uh, and I'm sorry, and as the detrimental effects of gender discrimination continue to fade, women's colleges will continue to decline in number. That is all in quotation marks, typed as you see. Burden in parentheses. You do not have to add a page number because it is an online source. Then he frames the paragraph, the next section, still supporting his purpose for writing, or his claim on the topic, right, or the claim on the topic, which supports his thesis. And then he frames this paragraph with an immediate counter argument on the topic. So if he's a yes answer, yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. These are no answers. No, single sex colleges are not obsolete. Next, we get a nonetheless on the topic, which is reinforcing his point of view, or reinforcing his purpose for writing or argument on a topic. So there's a nonetheless. And this nonetheless, the full paragraph, is supports his position, right? So if he stopped here, he would not lose his argument. However, if he stopped here, he would lose his argument. Okay, meaning that he does not end on his own argument. And so then the last paragraph, or the last section, titled Rising Costs, begins with a summary of the other side of the topic, those people who are interested in keeping single sex colleges, who are no answers, right? And then the ultimate rebuttal on the topic is him ending on his nonetheless, or ending how he started. He ends how he started. This is the end. This is how he starts. So he does not deviate. And as long as he ends the way he starts, he has built a solid argument. Now, we can do further analysis and say, hey, he should have done this, he should have done that. All that matters is that he started an argument. He added the counterclaims on the argument. He countered the counterclaims, and then he rebutted the argument, ending on his argument. Okay, so this is the end of the Women's College. Brian Burden, Harvard Political Review.